I'd now like to give the floor to Lars-Anders Bear, who will talk about the importance of protecting farmers' livelihoods and farmers' rights.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and the friends of indigenous people, you hopefully enjoyed the video ride from the Sami homeland, Sapmi, known as Lapland. And you may ask, what has ice, snow and reindeer herding to do with the thematic of this event? I will leave that question open. First of all, I want to thank FAO for the invitation and the possibility to address some views from an indigenous point of view and highlight some of the critical challenges most of the indigenous face today. The indigenous peoples are now globally in a crossroad between a grim colonial past and a future where indigenous peoples are recognized as peoples equal with other peoples. The video that you just saw is shot from a drone on the Norwegian side, close to North Cape. The video captures both the past, the present, and hopefully the future, if not climate change comes between. You can also see that the traditional reindeer herders are high-tech, use high-tech as snowmobiles and drones. And in the reindeer herders' worldview, tradition are not the opposite of functional modernity. In this context, we have to bear in mind that the animal herding, pastoralism, is a subsistence strategy that is practiced by peoples and population on low-producing ecosystem worldwide. It has been estimated that pastoralism practice on 25% of the global land area, providing 10% of the world meat production. Increasingly, it is slowly vanishing due to the land pressure, ecological degradation and climate change, particularly in the developing countries. In the contemporary international political discourse concerning the rights of indigenous peoples, paradigm shifts have taken place in the beginning of the 21st century. The United Nations General Assembly adopted the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples in September 13, 2007. This decision must be described as the absolute paradigm shift in the relation between indigenous peoples in the world and the United Nations and its member states. At the 2014 World Conference on Indigenous Peoples, the General Assembly requested the development of a system-wide action plan for a coherent approach of achieving the ends of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. After consultation with the indigenous peoples, member states, and within the UN system, the Secretary General shared a finalized system-wide action plan with heads of United Systems Agency at the meeting of the United Nations Chief Executive Board in November 2015, where he encouraged them to make concentrated efforts to implement the plan. The United Nations system is already at work implementing the action plan, which have been partly introduced to indigenous peoples and member states at the 15th session of the Permanent Forum that is now taking place in New York just at this moment. In this context, it's enjoyable to note that FAO have been proactive. In February 2015, FAO organized a technical meeting between indigenous peoples representatives with the objective of discussing a joint work plan to implement the 2010 FAO policy and policy of indigenous peoples and tribal peoples. One of the points of the joint work plan is the identification of FAO and indigenous peoples focal points at the global, regional and the national level, with the main objective of facilitating interaction between indigenous peoples and FAO on a regular basis. To enable this interaction, it was agreed to establish an indigenous peoples caucus, among others, to follow up and monitoring the implementation of the joint working plan between FAO and the indigenous peoples. In closing, I want to return back to what I started with, namely ice, snow and reindeer herding, and to that add climate change. The footprint of climate change is indeed evident in many places in the world. For many indigenous peoples at the globe, they are living in ecological niches, voluntary or by other reasons, in Amazonas, in the Congo Basin, the Andean Highlands, Sub-Sahara, the Pacific and in the Arctic, and this is already a reality. This is especially evident in the Arctic and the Pacific, where the melting of sea ice and glaciers in the Arctic is interconnected with the rise of the sea levels in the Pacific. This means literally that the ice is melting under the feet of the Inuits hunters in the Arctic at the same time as many indigenous peoples in the Pacific are preparing to leave their disappearing islands forever. Finally, I want to emphasize that agriculture in a broad sense, including food security, indigenous food system, and pastoralists, should have a more decisive role, not only in the debate on climate change, but also in the struggle to reduce the level of emissions, both in the short and in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you very much.